much is this?
50 cents.
50 cents. Damn, that's cheap. Whoa. It's cheap for here, definitely.
A lot in between, a lot to go in between that.
Why don't you go to like give us anything for like, like in the will? You know,
What
put something in the will for all of us.
What are you talking about? What do you say? Put something in the world?
The will.
Oh, in the will?
You know, for all of us.
What are you talking
I mean, is that what you're interested in?
Yeah, don't worry about that, Sammy. I'm sure there'll be something for everybody.
Recording?
Yeah. Okay, so we still got a lot to cover after the war, and we got 34 minutes.
You know, I feel slighted now that Sammy brought up something like, isn't there something in a will? That wasn't a nice thing to
Yeah,
say.
no. He's a young child. We didn't want him in here anyway.
That was a nice thing to say.
Yeah, I was just shaking my head to him too.
Huh? Which leads me to believe that's the only thing you're interested in.
No.
If I got a few bucks that I'm going to leave to you. Well, that's what I believe. I mean, that's what I get
You
out
should
of that
apologize,
statement.
Sammy.
Which means I'm going to leave you about a dime.
Now you're getting screwed. All right. So,
Where was I?
you said goons up.
Oh, so when a guard would come in to the barracks, one of the guys that spotted him first would yell, "Goons up," and we'd all be aware of he's there, and we would mind our P's and Q's, whatever that is. And because we had a radio that would come around from time to time and would give us the BBC News, so we know what the hell's going on in the world. Because let's face it, we got no newspapers, and we didn't know what was going on. But we were well apprised that was what was going on because of the radio, the illegal radio. PS, what incidentally was around. Not that each barracks had their own. There was one radio in the camp, and this radio would go around from barracks to barracks. We each had a turn having a radio. And the one who had the radio, in turn, was to
Tell everybody.
go around from barrack to barrack, relating the highlights of the news, of the particular news of the day. And let's see, if things in the camp were, we had a guy that did give haircuts. We used to wash our own clothes. We used to do, there was no such thing as a shower per se. Everything was like, we would like sponge bathe. You know what sponge bathe is?
Mm-hmm.
Stand up shower, sponge bathe to keep clean. And we would get a couple of slices of bread a day and soup, period. That was it. Soup and bread. And in the morning we'd get what was called ersatz coffee, which was made of dried acorns, which tasted like hell. It was god awful, really god awful. But that's all we had. All right, so a few months of that, and then
A few months. I thought it was 16 months or something.
16 months, yes, but when the Russians started getting close, they evacuated us from that camp, and we were taken to another camp, which was in the heart of Germany proper. Well, here's another interesting story. I would say. When we evacuated that camp, we had to go from. A lot of this stuff. This is so long ago that this happened. That a lot of stuff is vague.
Just describe it as best you can, that's all.
Yeah. And I may jump from thing to thing, story to story here, because went to another camp. To get to the other camp, we had to go by boat. In the North Sea, we were put into a boat, in the hold of a boat. And in this hold of a boat, we had to climb down a ladder into the hole. And there were hundreds of men in this hole. And from time to time, they used to send out 2 buckets. One was a water bucket, and one was a pee bucket. And I was in the back of this hole.
Gotta make sure you don't confuse those, huh?
And by the time the pee bucket came back there, it was full. And by the time the water bucket came back there, it was empty. So
That's no good.
it was no good indeed. And we got. First of all, let me say this here. A lot of stuff is erased from my mind because a lot of stuff was very, very hard to take, you know, and time erased it from my mind purposely. I mean, I allowed time to erase it from my mind because had I retained all this, it would have made me very, very bitter. And I didn't want to be bitter. I want to go on with a normal life. And thank God I had a normal life after that. Somewhat normal anyway. A little crazy, but that's a little. Isn't everybody a little crazy?
Everybody is.
And I'm not leaving Sammy. I'm leaving Sammy 10 cents. And I don't want anybody to take it away from Sammy. Or maybe $1.10. Okay. How's that, Sammy? I just increased the fold by 10 times.
So,
So you got your share taken care of, okay? Don't spend it all in one store, whatever you do. All right, so from there we went to another camp. And going from the railroad station to the camp, we actually had to march. Okay. Because we had no other form of transportation. So I had this bad leg, you know. And most of the time we had to run. And we had dogs at our heels. Machine guns in trenches on the side of the road, and dogs at our heels when we run. And men who fell by the wayside really got chewed up from the dogs, and later on they were thrown on carts and brought to the camp. But and you, for whatever your life was worth, you made sure you ran. And I ran. And I had a bad leg because of this bullet in my leg. And I had, so we got to the camp, which seemed like we ran forever before we got to the camp. And we settled down in this other camp. Now, first of all, let me say this here. The second camp I was in was not in the heart of Germany, but it was closer to Germany than the first camp. And as the Russians made more advances, we were evacuated from the second camp. And this was during the month of February. And being evacuated from the second camp was all on foot. And we would march during the day, always with guards around, and dogs around, German shepherds. Okay, now, here we're marching, comes nightfall, and you know, you can't sleep outdoors at night. In February, you freeze to death, because it gets very, very cold in Europe, in that part of the country. So, we slept in barns along the way. We'd sleep in barns, under heavy guard, of course. Slept in haylofts and whatnot. And finally it reached a point. It reached a point where I could no longer go along because my foot was paining me very much. Gangrene set into my foot. And my foot actually turned black as charcoal. Black as charcoal. And I'm not exaggerating. And how I got to a hospital from that point on is not very clear in my mind, but I wound up in a hospital in Germany, the chief surgeon in this hospital was a prisoner of war, just like myself, except he was a surgeon. And he operated on me along with many, many others. I remember being in this hospital, being agonized and really in agony. I was in a bed. I remember if anybody came close to the bed, I would scream in agony because of my foot. A lot of men in this hospital had gangrene. Some had wet gangrene, some had dry gangrene. I had the dry gangrene. Wet gangrene would travel in through the system very rapidly and would kill you. I had men in bed in front of me die, men on each side of me died, men behind me in the bed died. They're dying all around me. Fortunately, luckily, I survived. But what happened was I was taken in for this operation, and this prisoner of war, who was a surgeon, operated on me. And not only operated on me, but there were operating rooms along this hall, one after the other, maybe five to 7 or 8 operating rooms, all in line, one after the other. And this doctor would go from room to room making his operation, going in one after the other, doing this operation. And I had my toes amputated there in Germany. And not only had my toes amputated, but I here again, I don't want to go into details. They go into the gory, they say gory details.
We'll go to that's what we want to hear, the gory details.
You want to hear the gory details?
Yeah, we can take it.
Well, in addition to having my toes cut off, 3 toes cut off, my big toe and the 2 toes next to it, I had a cut into my arch, made a deep gash into my arch, and to drain out the gangrene, they put in rubber hoses with holes in the rubber hoses. And they shoved rubber hoses into my arch, right through my toes that were amputated. So the gangrene could not filter out, but drain out the rubber hoses. Talk about being in agony. Well, let me say this. I was given a spinal for the operation. And
Like a painkiller?
the spinal never really took effect because they were pretty tight on antibiotics. Not antibiotics, there was no such thing at the time.
Painkillers.
But they were, excuse me?
Painkillers.
Painkillers, they were pretty tight on painkillers. They didn't, I'm not trying to tell you that they didn't have to, the German, you know, at that particular time in the war, they were running out of everything, you know. So they had to make do with what they had. And what they had was very, very little. So there was a time, and I can be very honest with you, I prayed to die. I wanted to die. I was in so much pain, I couldn't take it. I prayed every day, more than once, that I should die. I should get out of this excruciating pain. If anybody would walk close to the bed, any vibration would set off such pain that would be absolutely unbearable. Well, after a time, the pain more or less subsided to some degree. By slow degrees, and it took quite some time for the pain to subside to where I had some relief. But like I said before, no painkillers, not even so much as an aspirin. Not even an aspirin. Just didn't have it. They didn't have it. But, well, I survived, and here I am. And I had other operations after I got back to the States, because I was a long way off. Well, let me say this, that while I was at this camp hospital, the Russians have succeeded into making inroads into the heart of Germany, whereby they, as you know, as history will tell you, that they got into Berlin and the war ended. Well, the war had ended at the particular time, at that time, and I was liberated by the Russians. Liberated by the Russians.
Free man.
And then, of course, the American forces sent the plane down, picked me up, and I was flown into the American sector in Germany, and from there I was taken to a hospital in Paris. In Paris. And I spent some time at a French hospital in Paris. And from there, I was flown back to the United States. And I spent some time at Halloran Hospital on Staten Island, where I had some more medical attention. At the time I was repatriated, I was told I weighed like 90 some odd pounds. I went from about 160 to like 90 pounds. And, well, when I was in pain, food had no interest to me. Not that they had any to begin with, but it had no interest to me. And the rest is history. And I spent time in the Paris hospital. Then I was flown to the States. I spent time at Halloran Hospital in Staten Island. And then I went to Valley Forge General Hospital, which is in Pennsylvania, and that was the plastic surgery center for the Army. This is where I had my fourth toe amputated. And I had a skin graft taken from my thigh. And it was they were going to graft the skin from my thigh onto the ball of my foot to give me some cushion. Well, P.S. the skin graft never took. The skin graft died, but the foot did heal after a while. And here I am, many years later, and I'm here.
80 years old.
End of the story.
Oh, there's still plenty to go after the war.
Yeah, there's a lot.
What about Violet? How'd you meet Violet?
Oh, well, okay. I knew Violet before that, before I went to the service. I knew Violet from our social club on the East Side.
Oh, yeah?
Because Violet, although Violet lived in Brooklyn, in Flatbush, Brooklyn, but she was a friend. She had a friend of my friend Artie's girlfriend or wife at the time was Violet's friend. And Violet used to come down to the East Side very often because her mother was formerly from the East Side, and her mother had a lot of friends on the East Side. So they used to trek down the East Side all the time. So anyway, after the service, my friend Artie thought it would be a good idea for me to meet Violet again, you know. I haven't seen her in many years before that. Anyway, so we met her and kept company. After a couple of years, we got married. That's about as far as you want to go. The marriage lasted 29 years, and the marriage ended. And we went on from there. That's the end of the story. Come on, that's enough.
That's the end of the story. The man says it's over, it's over.
Final day, trying to get everybody out for breakfast.